Hello, and welcome to More Intelligent Tomorrow, a wide-ranging exploration of the potential impact of AI on the world around us, as envisioned by the future heroes of the human and machine intelligence revolution. Can AI ask questions, not just answer them? I think I just did. Well, anyway, we'll discuss this and more with Linda Klug on today's episode. And now, your host, Ben Taylor.
Linda, I'm so excited to have you. You're my second favorite CEO, but I might have to say third favorite. And so hopefully you forgive me that you're now my third favorite CEO. It's complicated.
I'm guessing Gonzo's one, and now your new CEO is probably your second one, right?
Yeah, Jeremy. So it's complicated. So much drama. But a lot of people want to emulate your career somehow. You know, your career is inspiring, the work that you're doing. And so I'd love for you to tell the audience some backstory about how did you get to where you are today, and then we'll transition where you can talk about the company. So what has your career looked like?
So my bachelor's degree is in formal logic, which is a part of philosophy, and my parents were completely distressed that was my choice. So my parents are immigrants. They were hoping that I would go into some science or something really practical, but turns out all these years later, formal logic is great for AI, so it wasn't such a terrible choice after all. So after school, I actually worked on disasters full-time for 5 years. So I worked in the war in former Yugoslavia while working for the UN, worked for the American Red Cross. I was on 55 different catastrophic events. And I'm from Silicon Valley, so it was the early 90s. And that's when everything started to boom, and I became fascinated with the whole of data and systems in technology that was growing and how the world was getting interconnected that way. So that's how I actually got into a technical life, and I never left. So I got a graduate degree in applied economics, and I ran global consulting practices for really big tech companies like Veritas, Symantec, and EMC. And I hold 12 enterprise patents. 10 of them are in Veritas software, and 2 of them are for innovations in artificial intelligence.
That's awesome. How do you decide when you should invest in a patent versus a trade secret as a founder running the company that you're running now?
Sure. So for us, we had 30 days before the 1 year was up for a certain part of our tech. And we met with the patent attorney, and he got really excited about how we solved a particular problem that he thought was an innovation in AI itself. So we were the first to actualize an AI theory from the 80s around knowledge engineering. So it was kind of this choice where we didn't have much time to think about it, and we just did it. And then there was one other patent that was related to it. So it wasn't something super well thought out, but it wasn't very expensive to do. We made the deadline by 1 day. And within the next month, a company reached out and was interested in actually engaging us as infrastructure as a service. And the patent was really meaningful to them. So I don't think it's meaningful to VCs, and I don't think it's meaningful to be able to defend it. But it turned out to be meaningful to them.
Okay. 1 day, that sounds stressful.
I don't like to be last minute, so yeah.
I guess to complete that, well, the most important part of the story is what led you to go out into the unknown and start this company, Aaron. So maybe tell the audience about that jumping point, which from any sane person that understands what you did, it's insanity. So explain that jumping point and then explain what you're working on today.
Thanks. So one of my customers, I was a consultant, and there was a day that he was absolutely furious. And it's one of my favorite clients. He's a mild-mannered person. I never saw him lose his temper ever. And he was furious because there was about 120 experts working on his complex technical project. And 2 years went by and nothing had gotten done. And he put me in charge of architecting this solution. And he said, Linda, I don't think the problem is the tech. I think the problem are the people. They're just not understanding each other. So just go figure that out. And when I went to go and talk to all these folks, there were people from really big names because they're, half were clients, half were vendors. And I just asked them, it's been 2 years. What's the next question? What's the next problem statement? Like, where are you stuck? I've been with them for 8 years. It can help. And no one could give me an answer. And that kind of just led to the first part of an insight that in my background in enterprise tech, we haven't changed since the 90s. We're still having a lot of meetings and a lot of whiteboarding, a lot of emails with really expensive people. And it's taking us like 6 months to 2 years to architect anything. And that just seemed ridiculous. And when I sat down for lunch with the former CIO of Veritas and Greg Valdez, and he said, you know, Linda, those decision trees in your head, you can teach a machine to do that. And that was in 2016. And the most important part is he said, and you can do it for about $3 million now. You can probably raise that. So then I became obsessed. So I started reading nonstop. I probably slept 3 hours a night for 5 months. I know, Ben, you keep that up still. I don't know it, but for me, it was 5 months that I just could not read enough about it. And Aaron got started.
What is the 2020 hindsight through experience where you would go back and consult your younger self? So if you did things over again, and I know this is a huge question, like this is book worthy. You could write a book, but what are like the top things that come to mind? Advice that you might give your younger self or to a younger entrepreneur that does have something they're obsessed about. So if I'm coming to you and I'm saying I am obsessed about this topic in AI, I'm going to go do a startup. Yeah. So what are some things that come to mind when you think about lessons learned?
Probably the biggest lesson I learned is patience. And I thought I had a lot of it from enterprise because everything moves really slow. Enterprise clients move slow. I was really well prepared for long timelines in general. And then I came from consulting. So I'm good at forecasting. I have a pretty good handle on how to forecast time and control it. This startup definitely kicked my butt on patience. It's been really tough to kind of apply your enterprise life to then startup life and realizing that so many variables are not in your control. And you have to just control the things you can and work hard on the things you can. But a lot of things happen to us. So a lot of them, a lot of luck. So for example, 3 months into development, Google's AI services platform came out with a service that like saved us 6 months of engineering. Couldn't have predicted that, right? Other things of just finding the right people at the right time that would have been super hard to really calculate. Like we had to find an architect for AI that coded all day. We couldn't afford both. And we found him. But things like that really early on that were really tough kind of just taught me a lot about that some things are luck that move fast, but a lot of things are patience that moved really slow.
AI is a very dangerous thing because a lot of people fall prey to the shiny new toy. And so how you're in, and I'd love your perspective on this because you're coming from the executive perspective, but you're managing individuals that are technophiles. They love the technology. They love the shiny new toy. And so how do you play that balance between a shiny new toy that does change and offer value for the company versus maybe the warning to not now, it's not the right time? So how do you manage technophiles? I guess my question is going all over the place, but how do you manage technophiles and what is your mindset as an executive?
So I'm also obsessed with the tech. I love it. But my primary driver is the problem statement. And to me, that problem statement is it's really difficult to scale experts. And I'm fascinated by the fact that there's variance in experts, even though they have the same amount of experience. So the problem statement that I became obsessed with wasn't around the AI tech. It was about being able to clone the cognitive reasoning of experts to create AI companions for those that were not as clever. And that is all I think about. And until I'm done, just a dog with a bone. I mean, that's just how I always am. I can't do anything but that. So for me, the technology is just a way to make that happen that I never thought was possible. Because what we're really using with cognitive expert systems is being able to find patterns. Because experts don't think linearly. We don't think in if-then statements. We don't think in decision trees. That's for very junior staff. Senior experts, they think laterally. They keep a lot of things in their head, and there's not necessarily an equation of things being equal. There's lots of ways to solve a problem. Some are just better than others. It's just hard to keep a memory of all of those possibilities. So what I love is just being able to use that technology for that pattern recognition and perfect memory. So I'm getting older. I can't remember everything the same, but Aaron can. So just working on it.
A lot of times people see AI as human versus AI, and some of us see it as human plus AI. And so maybe speak to that, because you're talking about unlocking experts. What happened to the experts?
Yeah.
How do you speak to that?
So Aaron is AI augmentation of humans. So it's the idea that those special people that are a lot better than their peers, they create models in Aaron to clone their cognitive reasoning, how they connect those dots in their head laterally. And it creates an AI companion for other experts. And what we mean by that is the expert human relies on judgment, creativity, and empathy. But Aaron's really good at perfect memory and pattern recognition. So the two of those combined, it turns out some amazing results when you combine kind of the experts that have a foundation of knowledge, but maybe aren't as talented at that pattern recognition. But with that little help of that perfect memory and pattern, we just see some amazing results, and it keeps us getting up in the morning.
This is I'm having a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun for me. There's so many questions that are kind of spinning around, but one of the ones that I want to make sure we speak on, this is more of a personal question, but I would not want to be your competitor because I can sense your obsession. You are obsessed on this topic, but the problem with obsession, and this is like a word of warning, is how do you manage work-life balance? So how do you stay sane? So for the other people that are obsessed, how do you stay sane and be obsessed at the same time? And maybe this is too personal of a question, but how do you think of it that way? Like,
so I'm also a mom, so that really keeps things real when you go home. I have lots of responsibilities when I get home, and it's a lot more immediate needs. And so that there's not really a choice when you've got kids to take care of, and they're a joy, as well. So for me, some of it is family, and I'm in a rock band. So I play music, and I play with some other people that are also technical, and it's kind of their break. And we enjoy that. So play for a couple hours a week, play some gigs, and we're good.
That's awesome. So do you have certain rules that you try to abide by? Like, do you put your phone away when you're with your family, or no laptops? Like, what are some of the things you've learned to really be there in the moment with your family?
My phone is always with me, but I've broken an obsession of looking at it constantly, but it is always with me. So that I don't break. But 6:30 to 9 o'clock is our family time. So 6:30, I cook with my husband. We're with the kids, 7 to 8. I've got a routine with my younger son that I never break. So I'll even leave things early to kind of do that. So that's a big part of our day. My daughter and I, she's 19, she's in college. We play Nancy Drew video games together. She's home now because of COVID and also home now for this summer, but we actually rigged it through Zoom even before all of this happened. So she would play in her dorm room. And so those things are important. So we would always play like once a week. Like right now we play on Thursdays.
What video games do you like playing?
I love strategy games in general, and I could talk about video games for like way too long. So I'll try to make this one. So,
no, I have so much love and respect for everything everything you guys have been doing. And I want to make sure we kind of go back to what you guys are working on over there. So I know you guys are building AI models for a variety of customers. One of the things that we constantly deal with in AI is how do you generalize something? So like, do you build one model for all the customers? Do you build models for certain applications? Maybe what's your perspective when it comes to building AI models for your clients?
So our dream was to be able to deliver AI expert system technology directly into the hands of experts so they can innovate and iterate on their own. I always saw this gap between business people and the technologists. They don't communicate the same. And I made a lot of money in consulting, bridging that gap, is helping my CIOs say the same thing, but in a way that business people can consume. And for years doing that. And what I've discovered is it's really difficult for people to do that on their own. That technical people, they tend to be able to, they need answers. When you cut something works or it doesn't work. And business doesn't work like that. There's a lot more gray. They pick a lot of things on relative difference. So they're just not wired sometimes the same. So when they communicate things like, I love when you and I presented once together where you talked about AI as a science project, right?
Yeah.
That's sometimes what happens because the business people have this idea in mind and they fund this to happen. And the engineers and AI guys, they make exactly what the business people said, and it doesn't provide business value, and everyone is frustrated. So for me, the big inspiration was what could be possible if the people themselves could have access to it. So my co-founder, Alicia Davidson, she's just a brilliant designer. She heads up engineering, and I knew that we could figure it out. And it was a very big build, but this idea of building a business UI to a platform for expert systems. We were surprised. So our clients, they make their models themselves, and that's the entire premise. We've got it down now to where someone with a high school education, like in a contact center in customer service, they can make a model in about 3 hours that actually gets at least Aaron started, that provides value, while then over time we gather data and can refine it on the back end. But they can actually get immediate value of it because these are things that they never write down. Basically how they think and put things together. It's not what a knowledge base is. It's really like, how do you think? We were surprised that it was just easy for them.
Wow. Oh, yeah. It's fascinating because most people fail. Like, by most people, I mean most companies. Like large companies, they never connect ROI to AI ever. And AI projects remain notebooks trapped inside a Technophile. And these are huge companies that we've all heard of. So what advice would you give to other executives, maybe people that aren't in your line of work? How do you make AI successful? So if you land in a new position as an executive for a different company, different industry, how would you approach using AI to ensure that it actually does deliver a return on investment, since it usually doesn't?
I think the experience I had with Greg is what needs to happen in every company, which is, I know a lot about a narrow subject. I led global practices for all these years. And Greg explaining to me how cognitive expert systems worked and what was possible, that it was about memory and pattern recognition, how they weren't necessarily decision trees, just explaining that, I made that connection then with my own expertise. So to me, the business person understands the problem statement to solve, but I couldn't even imagine solving this problem until someone actually told me what was possible. So it never occurred to me to scale an expert this way. I couldn't conceive of what a cognitive expert system could do, but the minute he explained it, everything made sense. I don't know that it's that easy for technical people to expose their business leadership to these concepts in a way that lets the business person be creative and figure that out. But again, Greg was a CIO of a Fortune 500 company at Veritas at CA Technologies. Like, his job is to bridge technology with business people. So I had the best person to explain something like that to me, and I think that's not that common in enterprise.
Yeah. What's your perspective on the importance of having a design, good design, user experience feedback loop, where maybe there are a lot of technophiles out there that don't really see it as a core science?
So when I had the inspiration for Aaron, I knew Alicia for years, but I thought it was so important. I sought her out to be my co-founder, that this was going to be half the company, that half the company was going to be, how do you communicate AI expert systems to everyone? How can you put that in everyone's hands? And our first funding was from a Microsoft Ventures seed fund called Alonzi Ventures. They hired 3 architects who just thought about it for 2 months, if it could even be possible what I planned. Because I wanted not just this delivery of putting that in people's hands where they can actually train it on their own, but also where it could be taught any expertise, not an expertise, but any expertise. And those were really big at the time, not things that had been solved, but they did figure it out. And to me, everything was, there's the technical part to figure out, but the delivery of that's everything. And Alicia, I just knew that for me, that was the biggest priority. Engineering would come to me, that would be okay, but we did find geniuses. It turned out Aaron was a little bit harder to engineer than we thought, but Nick, our PhD, he figured it out. Took a while, but we did it.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for coming on this. It's fantastic. So much love and respect for the work you're doing. And we'll definitely include links through so people can check out the work you guys are doing at your site. We do have a lot of IT directors that do follow us that are already customers of our AI offering. So I really appreciate this, Linda. This is great.
Thanks for inviting me, Ben.
Yeah, so good to see you. Okay.
Bye.
Okay, we'll talk soon. See ya.